I think at this point, everyone knows how to use the mute button. So keep those on when you're not talking so that we don't have so much interference. Feel free to put any comments or any reference documents or links you want to put in the chat box. Always appreciate whoever's speaking appreciates nods, thumbs up, verbal cues so that they can get a sense of everyone's understanding. If you need closed captioning, a reminder that you can go to the toolbar and look at the spot where it says 3 buttons, click on that and you can turn on live captions. We'll always try to use as much shared screen as we can for conversation. All of our documents, I think most of them were distributed to you. Anything that comes up in the meeting that wasn't, we'll make sure is on the shared drive for the team. And always a reminder that this is a public meeting and is being recorded. We welcome all guests to the public meeting, but a kind reminder that you are guests and will not be viewed as full participants who are speaking. So welcome again to the meeting. Let me do a quick roll call vote. It's in alphabetical order if that helps you know when to turn your mute on and off. So Jason Abadili, who I'm not sure could be here today, so just double checking. Okay. Vic Gable.
Here.
Kim Hauk.
Hi, everyone.
Kristen Henry, who I believe could not be here today, so I think Paige is here representing. Is that correct? Thank you. Debbie Jenkins.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Debbie. Willie Jones.
Good afternoon.
Kim Kelly.
Yes.
Teresa Cobelt.
I'm here.
Pete Moore.
Hello.
Bethany Toledo.
Hi.
Gary Tonks. Again, I'm not sure he could be here, but just in case he was able to make it. Gary. Okay. Christine Brown. Christine here. Jason Umstadt.
I'm here. Sorry, it was muted.
Okay. Hi. Jason.
I'm here.
Renee. Renee Wood. Okay. Thank you for all that. All right. So let's get started with our first thing on the agenda, which is a welcome from our director.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. Really excited to hear the 2 reports from Christine and others and Bethany. So I want to make sure that we have enough time to hear those and have good conversation about it. So thanks, Jackie.
Okay. So our first presentation today comes from the Nysonger Center. So we want to hear about their latest report. And we have David Ellsworth, Lauren Hackenberg, and Christine Brown to help share that with all of us. Again, feel free to ask questions and feel free to put anything in the chat room and we'll all try to help monitor that for our presenters. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is David. Hopefully you are seeing what looks like slides right now. If I could get a nod, that would be good. All right. So hi, everyone. I'm David Ellsworth. I'm with the Ohio Disability and Health Partnership, and my role is kind of unique in that I am a full-time employee of the OSU Nysonger Center, but I have a dual appointment at the Ohio Department of Health, and it's really my job to ensure that all of the Ohio Department of Health program areas are inclusive of and consider the needs of people with disabilities. So I really kind of bring the public health perspective to this. And I want to give a lot of credit to Christine Brown for essentially helping to direct this project. I will disclose that this is an area that I know relatively little about, certainly before doing this project, and I have a little bit more knowledge now, but this is not my area of expertise, which I think is, nor is it the area of expertise of my research team. So I think that we bring kind of a unique new perspective, but we do want to hear from people on this call, you know, how to interpret this and what does this mean and what are our opportunities. So our project was to determine the needs of direct support professionals in the workforce, and to really hear from the workforce to include in our advocacy and policy efforts. So I'm joined here by Lauren Heckenberg and Christine Brown. Although I will direct this presentation today, I will say that this has been an ongoing LEND project. If you're not familiar with the LEND program, it's at the Ohio State University Nighthawk Center, and it brings a whole bunch of interdisciplinary students together to work on projects. So this is a cool 2-year project now that we've been working on, and we still have a bit of work to do, but I'll move us forward. So why this project? Direct support professionals are absolutely critical to the lives of people with disabilities. They support and empower them in all aspects of living, but there are some obvious challenges, which is why we're organized here today, and I so appreciate the work of this group to address these employment shortages. Obviously, this is detrimental to both the workforce of just direct supports professionals, but also the people they serve. In terms of the shortages, it can negatively impact economic and social consequences that affect people with disabilities, their family, other caregivers, direct support professionals, care provider agencies, and communities. And I think the punchline that I took away from all of this research and this project is that this is a widely overlooked public health issue. This is not as discussed in public health circles as I think it ought to be. And I think that framing this as a public health issue could be a way to advance policy in this area. So the purpose of our project was to gain a better understanding of the direct support workforce crisis in Ohio. We did our own policy brief, which we have published, and that was a good way, honestly, for us to wrap our heads around what does this look like in the state of Ohio. At the time we originally set about this, we were really interested in the competency-based add-on and whether the proposed increase was enough to retain individuals. And like most policy projects I embark on, that changed as we were doing our project. So we shifted focus of our survey to gain a better understanding of what the workforce challenges and opportunities were. And I know now that this has complemented several other surveys that have attempted to do the same. So in terms of the landscape of the DSP workforce, we know that this is a field that is projected to increase pretty substantially between now and 2030, but wage growth and wage earnings across the board, not just in Ohio, remain pretty low. The median annual salary was about $27,000 a year, and that is barely above the federal poverty level. So while growth in this field is projected to increase, I think that we're all sort of aware of the financial constraints around this, which hampers some of our efforts to grow and expand the workforce and attract and retain people within the workforce. When we looked at just kind of a comparison of wages in Ohio, we found that home health professional and home health aides, which were kind of as close as we could get to direct support professionals, sort of fell in this medium income between a couple different workers, mostly in kind of the sales and service field. So kind of the closest thing that we would get to is like fast food workers, cashiers in retail environments, janitors, cleaners, and packers of that sort. But these tend to be lower wage jobs. Obviously, the effect of the workforce shortage has a profound negative impact on people with disabilities. The compounding stress of not having a reliable caregiver can make health conditions worse. It can certainly increase the strain on mental health, as we've seen throughout the pandemic. It can force some individuals to forego the care that they need or to at times be risk being placed in an assisted living facility, sort of against their will. And then it adds strain on families and caregivers. So this is sort of where our survey came in, and I'll share just essentially what we found. And I'd be interested to have a conversation on, how do we interpret this? What's next? And what are some of the opportunities here? So we distributed this survey through provider agencies and disability-led organizations. And on it, this is one of the most responded to surveys that I've worked on and probably will work on. We had about 1,000 DSPs respond to this survey, and it was pretty spread out through Ohio. So our catchment area was good. I mean, there weren't many areas of Ohio that were just not reached. Some were reached more than others, but our response rate was pretty good. I will say that with the caveat of this is not a representative sample of all DSPs, so we can't say with confidence, this is what Ohio is telling us. We can say among the people that took our survey, this is what we're hearing, but we cannot project our results kind of to a larger degree.
And I would say that from that map that was shown, David, if you go back, the white was where there was no responses from those counties. So that's a lot of counties that are more on hypothetically saying this, don't have good internet or don't have a way of getting things out as well. So, but Lauren's from Summit County, and that's her home county, and we got the most out of that.
Thanks, Christine. Yeah, all in all, our coverage was pretty good, but there were some counties that we didn't have any respondents. But this turned out better than I thought, if we're going to be honest. So we looked at closed-ended and open-ended questions, so kind of a mixed methods approach. Responses, and that's what we focused on this year. We had an independent team of 4 Lens students that looked at about 2,500 open-ended responses, and then we met as a group to arrive at a consensus among what are we hearing, what are the themes here, and we sort of compared this data to see, okay, do these responses align, and what might be some opportunities for policy change, and what do we just need to mull over a little bit more. So the majority of our respondents, almost 70%, are affiliated with an agency provider or are an independent provider or both. So 25% were independent providers, but I was encouraged that the majority were agency providers or both, because I think that that's a real opportunity for policy changes, knowing that, our respondents are mostly representatives of those agency providers. The majority of our respondents were female. 82% were female, 13% were male, and a very small minority were non-binary or preferred not to report that out. The majority of our respondents were not Hispanic or Latino. 76% were white, nearly 15% were Black or African American. And compared to the Ohio census data, this aligns pretty closely with what we see, but there is a slightly larger percent of our respondents that reported being Black or African American than the overall Ohio population. The age range of our respondents was kind of interesting. So what we had hoped to do is use some of this data to inform, okay, why are people not staying in the field for more than 6 months? And we didn't end up getting a lot of responses from the very young workers in this field. And that could be for a couple reasons. There might not be a ton of very young workers in this field. But also, we think that we got a lot of people who had been in this field for a long time, which I'll show later, and have stayed in the field. So our respondents, I would guess, are probably older than what's representative of this field, but the respondents tended to be 55 years or older, which gets me to the next one. So we asked how long had people been employed in the field, and the majority of the people that we got responses from have been in the field for 10 years or longer. And we speculated that this might just be because they have more experience in the field, were more likely to take our survey, and had more to say. So again, we didn't get a lot of responses from people who have been in the field for less than 1 to 2 years. But we did get a lot of responses from people who have been in the field for more than 2. And I think that's good. Again, if we're considering policies around retention, we're hearing from people who have been here for at least more than 2 years. They have a lot to say. So we asked how often do you serve more than one client? And about 60% say I serve more than one client daily, or 20% said weekly, and then the remainder said as needed. So a lot of people serve more than one client daily or weekly. Then we asked, kind of straight up, do you plan on staying in the field over the next 2 years? And given what we know about our respondents, the majority said yes. 63% said yes, but then around 40% said, more specifically 37 said, no, I'm not, or I'm unsure. And I think that that's kind of cause for concern. Relatively few people said, I think I'm not going to stay in for more than 2 years, but the relatively large proportion of people said, I'm not sure. You don't want 30% of your workforce that's on the fence. What I don't have is a comparison among other fields. This could be entirely representative of other fields, and I might not just be aware of it, but that's an opportunity for additional research on our end. So take this as you will. Among our respondents, 63% said I'm staying, around 40% said no or I'm unsure. This response came from our analysis of the long responses. And we asked, what was your most recent job experience before becoming a direct support professional? And 25%, the biggest majority of jobs before becoming a DSP was from customer service industries. So this would include things like retail, fast food, etc. 17% said a healthcare field, and that might be any sort of kind of healthcare related job. Again, when we collapse these into themes, these are pretty broad, but if there is interest in any particular number of these, like if you want a breakdown of what customer service is, we can include that in our next results. We had a lot of people that just didn't fit neatly into one category. Their responses were mixed and we just couldn't fit them into these themes. The missing and incorrect one's kind of an anomaly. This could have just been people that answered the question like the previous question and just didn't answer this one right. So we can kind of ignore that. But then kind of varying percentage of people that came from trade jobs, from management positions, from people who have been a DSP their entire career, people who worked in the DD field, and then people who were either teachers or trainers, and then childcare. So if we're thinking about like where perhaps we're recruiting from, I think this data could be very useful. We asked people to rank these factors from most important to least in terms of what are the most important factors that would allow you to remain in the field. And the most important was wages and benefits. The second most important was the opportunities to support people with disabilities. And then next was a supportive work environment, ongoing training and professional development, and then opportunities for career advancement. When we split these up differently by age, we actually saw a little bit of movement. So we did look at these responses among some of our younger participants, and wages and benefits remained at the top, but the opportunities for ongoing training and professional development and opportunities for career advancement swapped with the opportunity to support people with disabilities in a supportive work environment. So it's interesting that the needs of kind of the younger DSPs shifted a little bit to having those opportunities for ongoing training and for career development. We selected some quotes from folks that we got to. This actually came from a different report, but we liked these. So the first is from an independent provider saying, you know, I work 60 hours a week or 48 hours a week. I have one Friday off, and frankly, I'm exhausted by this work. And then we have consumers telling us on the other end, you know, I need the assistance of all the people, of all the things that people take as human rights for granted. Like, I want to have access to that too, but I need the support to do that. And then one person said it's really a crisis because there are people that are suffering and potentially dying because we don't have people caring from us. So we get these mix of, you know, you kind of see the symbiotic relationship between independent providers and consumers. So again,
This is our big area that I really was impressed in.
Yeah, so it's, again, we analyzed about 2,500 responses, and that took a lot of time, and collapsing that down into almost one slide seems a little bit disingenuous, but this is what we have. So we asked people, you know, what are kind of your top 5 concerns among remaining in the field, where if addressed, that might encourage you to stay. The first and most important was pay. One person said, as a new parent, there are not enough benefits and pay needed to continue this employment. The main reason for staying is that I have love for the individuals that I serve. Another said, I like the field I'm in, and I also like my client. The only thing is pay. It's hard to stick around when you have people in the fast food industry making more than you are. The next most important concern was job stability. One person said, I love being a direct support provider, but I also love my family. I've been working so much that I can't take care of myself or for them. When I do take time for my family, I feel like I'm letting down people at work. Another said, I'm new to this field. Coming in, it was pretty overwhelming. There's not enough support within the field, and I fear for burnout and emotional exhaustion. And so you see a very close alignment between how people rank ordered those and what they told us. There weren't many curveballs. People, when given the opportunity to tell us in long responses, they mentioned sort of the exact same things as before in terms of opportunities for career advancement, benefits, you know, having insurance, vacation time off, etc. And then some responses around company culture and management, in terms of, you know, the reported paperwork, that job responsibilities change, that there aren't unions to support. But again, I found all of these fascinating. I don't necessarily think that these are issues that are exclusive to this field, but they are certainly felt within this field, and maybe to a larger degree due to the nature of this work. It's hard work, and it's absolutely essential. So similarly, we asked what incentives or supports other than increased compensation would allow you to stay in this field, and several people told us, you know, I see what you're trying to do, but that's a little disingenuous. Like, pay would allow me to stay in this field more. And that's one of the responses that we highlighted. If I could pay my bills and provide for my family without having to work 100 hours a week, you know, not being in survival mode would allow me to stay in this field. Some people said, I want to feel more support from upper management. I want to be able to leave on time, which was which was something that we kind of saw again and again, but we also saw people who were being very altruistic and were very devoted to serving their patients when they were in need. Like, even if that meant them working longer hours or, staying with them through the pandemic or an emergency. That kind of came up both ways, to be appreciated more and then to have benefits such as tuition reimbursement, certification, and additional training. So the top incentives, and again, these are our condensed long answers to promote retention. When asked, people said benefits and insurance are the most important thing that would allow them to stay. They did mention other financial incentives, paid time off, additional training opportunities, supportive management, and then there was just one category of other bonuses and incentives that didn't really neatly fall under time off or fall under benefits and insurance. And again, this kind of closely mirrors what we saw before. People are telling us, in two ways that these are important, and these are kind of the order in which they are important. We also looked at, like, why do people stay in the field? And the top reason that people stay in the field is because they genuinely enjoy the work. We saw this again and again and again. People saying that this is my passion and I enjoy working in the field. I am family to individuals that don't have family. I mentioned the client relationships and sort of these altruistic, tendencies of people in this field. A good quote that supports that is, rapid turnover in this field hurts our people. They become attached to us quickly as we do to them. We keep them safe and help them build trust in a world that sometimes takes advantage of them. This job is draining, but worth seeing, and worth seeing the people we serve grow. And then there was some other quotes just in terms of client relationships and then desirable job attributes. One quote that I thought was interesting was that my daughter needs me. I don't really trust anyone else to do this work. I've had an issue in the past with abuse that led to a loss. There are lots of reasons people stay in the field, and they vary to a large degree. But I think at the end of the day, we got a lot of people saying that they care about their clients. We love their smiles. I wish I was able to do more things that they want to do. I care about them and I want to make their lives as happy as I can. My clients need me. That's the main reason I stay. I renewed my certification because of that. So there were some people that take care of family members and that's their main motivation. And then another respondent said, this is physically, emotionally, and mentally draining, but seeing people thrive in their day-to-day life is the reason I stay. So, kind of in summary, what do we make of this? And, I think the punchline is that DSPs care deeply about their clients. They know that their work is essential to their livelihoods, but in that endeavor, they often feel unsupported in other aspects of their work, primarily due to low wages and a lack of benefits, a lack of, protected time off that they could otherwise use to spend with their families, and limited opportunities for career development. But that's tampered to some degree by the people that stay in this field genuinely enjoy it and generally, care deeply about their clients. So our next steps on our end is to share these findings with workers, with provider agencies, and state policymakers, such as yourself, and have these conversations. I think that there are some additional opportunities for us to explore the data a little bit more thoroughly. We just wrapped this project up, as in just got the results like maybe 2 days ago. So I have not spent a whole lot of time ruminating on, why some of these things are, and what opportunities to look into next. I would like to kind of compare some of these responses among people who've been in the field longer and people who have been in the field shorter. I would be interested to see, is the turnover that we're looking at in this field similar to others? And do the reasons Are the reasons the same, or are they unique? So I think that there's some opportunities for additional research here. But I also think that there are, opportunities for us to discuss promising practices and use these results to inform policy at the state level, to take these quotes and to take this data to decision makers and have those conversations about, what do we do with this? What should we do with this? And I did want to give a huge thank you to our partners, the Department of Developmental Disabilities, this work group, all of the advocacy work groups and self-advocates that we talked to in order to create these questions, to create this survey, and for all of the many, many direct support professionals who took this survey and provided their time. So I'll pause there, and I'll see if people have questions or reactions to this, but I wanted to thank everyone for their time.
Does anyone have questions on this or comment? Pete?
Pete, you might be on mute.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate it. Something you said right off the bat, I think it confirms a lot of the things, and is good data backing up what the arguments we've been making, especially throughout the budget. Something I'm really interested in, and it's probably more of a comment than a question, is viewing this, as you said, David, as a public health issue or a public health emergency. I think it's also coupled with the idea that I know I've been talking about lately, is I think Ohio has a health and human services infrastructure problem, especially as we, and I'm thinking of our friend Jason Umstadt who's on here, especially as we welcome companies like Intel and the talk of thousands of workers to Ohio. Do we have the infrastructure, the capacity, the quality services we needed to support that development? So I think, I say all this to say, I think we as a system need to start talking about the DD system and others should join together and start to talk about these capacity issues and encourage the governor, legislators to, as we talk about bringing new business to Ohio, we should be forced to talk about the infrastructure to support that business, the investment to support the growth in Ohio. So I think it'd be an interesting study, as we look at, when Intel builds, we're looking at water capacity and sewage and electricity and all that. We should also talk about our ability to support those moving to our state. It would be an interesting study to take on, to look at what do we anticipate is going to happen with this growth, and can we meet the need?
Thanks, Peter. That's really interesting, and honestly, I had not considered this before. I think over doing this project for 2 years, it was abundantly clear that this really isn't being addressed as a public health topic, and I feel very strongly that it should be. You certainly hear that from self-advocates, how this negatively impact, how the workforce crisis negatively impacts them. But I think framing it solely in terms of a workforce crisis sort of ignores the human toll of this. And it's, you hear that from self-advocates in various conversations inside and outside of this work group. But we also heard more than I would have expected from the DSPs about how this shortage in the field is negatively impacting their health and their livelihood. And for those reasons, I think that framing this also as a public health issue could be a way to garner more policy support. I say that with a grain of salt. I've been in public health long enough to know that, it's not a field that we typically get medals for, especially in light of the pandemic. But I think it makes sense to frame this issue in terms of its public health toll as well.
David, I don't know if you might want to stop sharing your screen. That way we can see everyone's faces and see who else might want to jump in the conversation.
That's my bad. I had you guys
No.
already pulled up.
No worries. There you go. Now, as soon as I say that, someone's going to ask you to show them slide number 2 or something. So
I'll get back to it if I need to.
Any other comments or questions before we hear about our DSP roundtables, which in many ways align with what you've just heard, with probably maybe a little additional flavor?
Hey, David, this is Teresa Cobelt from Ocali.
Teresa.
Hey, David. Hey, I wondered if any of the questions in the survey ask kind of why people got into the field in the first place. I feel like a lot of the comments about the clients, it seemed to be specific to maybe the people or person that they're working with right now. But obviously they wouldn't have known that person when they first got into the field. They knew what the pay was when they first got into the field. So I'm just, trying to figure out like, what is it that drew those people from customer service to DSP land?
So that was a question that we did not ask. And now it's abundantly clear it would have been good to ask that. But I feel like we had some discussion about that, and I'm not sure why it wasn't included. We did want to streamline, you don't want to overburden people with a long survey.
Yeah.
But I agree it would have been good to ask, like, why did you come here in the first place? And I don't know if we're entirely sure. I think that we could speculate on that, but I don't have any data to back that up.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Well, just to let you all know, we have poster day tomorrow in Cincinnati. We're going to have one made for our trainees, but we're making a more professional one for Director Hauk so she can have it at the department. So when people are walking in, everyone sees this research. Okay. So we'll be getting one more professionally done, shorter key points. Right, David?
Yep, we're going to have a couple versions of this poster. I will make sure that the nice looking one ends up in the director's office or where the director so chooses to put a poster.
Thank you.
Yeah, just saying.
Thanks, Christine, and thanks, David.
All right, thank you. The next item on our agenda sort of continues the flow of this conversation. Bethany Toledo is going to share with you the recommendations and findings from the direct support professional roundtables that were conducted. So, Bethany, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Can everyone hear me? Yes, okay. See if I can get my screen up. All right, Jackie, give me a thumbs up. Can you see my, all right, great. Thank you. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. As Jackie indicated, this is really a continuation of some of the things, David was just talking about. And in some instances, I was listening to him and thinking ditto. So to get started, we conducted what we called the DSP experience, which was a set of roundtables where we traveled around the state and talked to DSPs. The title of this report is called Pride and Commitment, and everyone should have received a copy of the full report yesterday from Jackie. These slides are meant to highlight some of the main findings in that full report, and we can have a more robust conversation at the end if there are some topics or things you didn't see in these slides that you read in the full report. So we gathered data in 3 different ways. Each of the sessions were facilitated by Jackie herself, and we started with some polling questions to get some quick and instant feedback from all of the participants in each room, and then we turned those into tabletop conversations. And then at the end, we had a QR code survey to ask some additional questions and gather some more data. Get my slides to advance. There we go. So we provided opportunities for face-to-face participation, again, throughout all of the regions in Ohio. And on the screen, you can see some of the demographic information that we captured. There were a total of 71 participants. 11% of those were male and 88% were female. So while a much smaller sample than what David had, the percentages of male to female really do align with that, as well as a lot of the other demographics. So keep in mind that we are talking about qualitative data. So we specifically looked at people's perceptions and their experiences. So, I know it's easy to slip into judging responses in terms of what the people surveyed feel or have experienced versus our own feelings and beliefs. So I just want us to keep in mind that their perception is their reality. Nearly half of the DSPs that we surveyed and talked to have earned some type of post-secondary degree, and a third of them have earned some type of college and or had some type of career training. So, we talked to a fairly well-educated group of people that have been in the field for a while. By and large, this was a self-selecting group of DSPs. So a lot of our small tabletop discussions led us to understand that people that have been in the field for quite some time have a desire to mentor new staff and share their knowledge and experiences, but they also want to be mentored and learn about other aspects of their organization so that they can be considered for advanced positions and opportunities in the future. This is really what rose to the top. DSPs specifically mentioned professional pride and their ability to be of service to others more than any other idea, concept, or activity in their daily work. One of the questions that we asked them was, how would you market the DSP job to others? And some people responded and talked about, while they would opt to focus on the positive and fulfilling aspects of the job to highlight, the DSP role in recruitment efforts, they feel that in some ways the job that is depicted in current advertisements is not the full reality of what they do. So they would like to see and even be a part of developing a realistic job preview through video and or job shadowing opportunities to cut down on the revolving door of people that accept positions and then leave as soon as they understand the full scope of what is expected. And what you see here on the screen, these are some of the things that people responded with, their words in terms of what is the most fulfilling part of the role to them. I think that this is a point that I brought to the group at our last meeting as a part of the preliminary findings, and that's that DSPs understand and respect the importance of family in a successful support equation. However, well-meaning family members can complicate DSP positions by either having unrealistic expectations or outdated views of an individual's capabilities, and or they can place demands on DSPs that fall outside of the ISP. So one of the recommendations that you will see in the full report includes adding training on conflict resolution, self-advocacy, and communication with an emphasis on managing difficult conversations very early on in a DSP's career. And, it's important to point out that it isn't just families that place unrealistic expectations on DSPs. There was a consistent theme across the state that there is an inadequate exchange between compensation, expectations, support, and respect, or lack thereof, versus what DSPs give in terms of their dedication, their commitment, and their sacrifice. So like the presentation that David just gave, DSPs are often put in positions where they have to work planned and unplanned overtime just to ensure coverage. And this really does affect, their home life. So looking at the first graph here, about 2/3 of the people that we talk to agree or strongly agree to seeing a clear tie between their organization's mission and their job. So that leaves about 1/3 of the people that are in the neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree category. So I know that agencies can spend, thousands and thousands of dollars on crafting a meaningful mission and vision. But if a DSP cannot see or is neutral to the connection between that mission and their work, it can further separate them from understanding the value and meaning of what they do. Looking at this second chart, nearly 40% of DSPs surveyed responded 60% of DSPs surveyed responded to agree or strongly agree to the statement that I feel supported to learn and grow within my organization, whereas about 40% of the DSPs responded as neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree. So in some organizations, it could, they could either be, inadvertently neglecting or overlooking the opportunity to nurture some in-house resources. So I'd really like us to talk about and look at, the knowledge capital that we have and the value of the knowledge capital that DSPs bring to the table at some point in time. We asked some questions related to supervision in the context of our QR code survey so that people could, reflect and respond honestly without fear of their responses being known by their coworkers that were there with them. And what we saw in the data and heard in the discussions is that DSPs crave good relationships with their supervisors. So we're going to take a look at some of that specific data. So 39% of the people surveyed see their supervisor multiple times a week, while 61% of them say that they see their supervisor one time a week or less. So that's not entirely surprising given that old adage that the squeaky wheel gets the oil. As we know, and I mentioned earlier, that this was primarily a self-selecting group of people, and these are people that have been in the field, for quite some time. And so whereas they may not be the ones that are struggling in their day-to-day job, we heard a lot of feedback from them about how they wish they had more opportunities to receive coaching and feedback from their supervisors. So about 70% of respondents often or almost always view their interactions with their supervisor as a positive part of their work experience. And about 30% of the respondents reported that their interactions were about half or less than half or rarely a positive part of their work experience. And on this one, about 60% of respondents strongly agreed that they felt their supervisor was well equipped or prepared to do their job, while 27% were neutral and 15% disagreed or strongly disagreed with that statement. So, and lastly, in terms of the supervisor questions, we asked DSPs how responsive their supervisor was to their expressed needs. 66% of the respondents felt their supervisors were always or usually responsive to their needs, while 34% of the respondents felt that responded somewhat or not often or almost never were responsive to their needs. So based on the feedback and data that we collected around supervisors, you'll find recommendations in the full report about prioritizing quality and ongoing supervisory skill training. So one of the other questions that we asked was what task or function within the role, are they not prepared to handle appropriately or makes them uncomfortable? And as you can see here, we received a variety of responses. So we just looked at these and kind of came to the conclusion that these are all areas where additional technical training and support might be warranted. So by and large, the response to this question, sorry, let me start with the question. This was one of my favorite questions that Jackie asked, and it's what keeps you up at night? And by and large, the responses to this question were about the people that they support in the future of their profession, not about their own personal struggles. We heard a lot of people talking about, you know, they can't afford to, you know, to pay all of their bills. They are supplementing with going to food banks and things of that nature. But when we talked about what kept them up at night, that's not what they said kept them up at night. You know, they talked about worrying, did they make a mistake? Is there something that, you know, that they forgot to do at work? It was all about the people that they support. So all things considered, people enjoy and are very proud of the work that they do. Just over 30% of respondents reported that they are very satisfied, and almost half of the respondents are moderately satisfied with the work that they do. So, you know, then that kind of led us to asking the question about whether they would recommend this job to their friends and family. And 81% of them surveyed said that they would recommend the job to their friends and family. And not only that, I thought it was kind of interesting. We learned that there are a lot of generational DSPs. So DSPs, I'm not saying that correctly, a lot of multiple family generations. So, you know, we talk to moms and daughters, we talk to people that were related that, you know, they have 3 and 4 generations of DSPs in their family. So it's something that I really haven't heard discussed before, but I'd love to dive a little more into that and learn a little bit more about families that, you know, that really find this profession as their home. So overall, the findings in the DSP Experience Report demonstrate a mismatch between direct support professional wages and their professional level attitudes, duties, responsibilities, and expectations. In the full report, you will see recommendations that fall into all of the categories listed here on the slide. And I know that there's a lot of effort already being put into many of these areas. And so this report is not meant to question or belittle current efforts at all, but to paint a broad picture that helps people understand where there may be gaps for their own organizations, and also point out areas that the system may be able to address more broadly. So in the full report, you'll see this conclusion, and I'm just going to read it word for word. You know, we must remove obstacles, both perceived and real, that require direct support professionals to continually make significant sacrifices just to maintain their positions. And we have a duty to provide ongoing opportunities for their involvement in addressing critical issues. These efforts will simultaneously improve the DSP experience, raise the public profile of the profession, and exemplify the system's high regard for DSPs and their contributions to the field. One of the messages that we heard loud and clear is that DSPs want to be a part of the solution. And as you can see by some of the quotes here on the screen, people came to these meetings and, said, wow, this is the first time I've ever had a chance to talk with people outside of, my organization. They asked us to please continue doing this to not let this conversation end. So that was very reaffirming. At the end of the full report, you will see a one-page synopsis that includes some recommended next steps, as well as the information here on the screen that just, that talks about, studies outside of our field that consistently and overwhelmingly show that keeping effective employees happy in their work and providing them with real opportunities for growth and development helps nurture both job satisfaction and loyalty. So it's really important that we as stakeholders listen and act on the DSP experience findings and recommendations. And at the end of the day, we can't dismiss or disregard the reality that even ironclad employees' loyalty break down when they lack reliable and supportive supervisors, or they have to choose between doing the work they love and earning an income that supports their family. So lastly, these are some of the next steps that are just very, very broad that we want people to take a look at. And it's really important that individual organizations as well as groups read through this report and ask themselves, what rings true for them or their organization or their scope of DSPs. Where do they, as an organization, hit the mark, excel, or fall short on employee support? And what questions do they need to ask next? It's our hope that this report, generates some good conversations. And, this report was really designed to make sure the voices of DSPs are being heard specifically by the Workforce Crisis Task Force. So this report is for us. It's for this group. I'm very honored to be a part of the task force, and I am involved with DSPs every single day, but I can't possibly convey their thoughts and experiences. So this report really gave us an opportunity to talk to them and then share some of that with this group. So with that, I'm going to see if I can stop sharing my screen.
And Bethany, while you do that, we can jumpstart discussion. There's been some stuff going on in the chat room. So I'll give Kim Kelly the floor, but she's making the point when you talked about how DSPs need to better understand how to have conversations with families. She's making, and so they may need training. She's making the point that the same may also be true for families. So let me open with you, Kim, if you're good with that.
Yeah, I'm okay. I've been employing people in this house for 30 years. And I think one of the big, and I've been an advocate for just as long. And I personally have been a provider for 17 years. And I think that it is very, very difficult to accept help into your home when you don't know what to expect. When I first hired people into the house, I thought they knew what they were supposed to do. No, they come through the door, and it was my responsibility to make sure that they knew exactly how to take care of my son. They get the basic training, but you don't really have the training that you need to be client specific. And so that takes, families need to know that. They need to set up a time where they can, and they need to set up they need to go through in their head, how am I going to communicate this to the person that I'm hiring into my house? Any information that you can give a DSP when they walk through the door that will enable them to better do their job with ease, know where everything is. I mean, my house runs 24/7 right now, but and I've been blessed to have people here for over 5 years, but there's so many components to taking care of my son. Where are the diapers? Where are the wipes? Where are the liners? Where are the additional supplies? Where are the medications? Where, do we use bottled water? Do we use tap water? I mean, there's so many tiny little things that they have to know that I have to communicate to them, because that's not something that they learn in a nursing school, in any kind of program that's available for a DSP to follow through with. It's person-centered training. And so we need to teach families how to do that person-centered training. We need to make them understand that they have a right to communicate the family dynamics and to expect that DSP to follow those family dynamics. We have the right to manage them the way that we think that they should be managed based on what our family member needs, but within reason. I mean, not everybody's a manager. Not everybody has these skills that I'm talking about, and we need to. We're not going to be able to like put them through, a 6-month training course. I'm thinking virtually, if you touch on each one of these subjects and give them some examples of things that they need to think about or that they need to do, like if you have little kids in the home and you're bringing hired help in, where do they put their pocketbook? What if they have medications in that pocketbook that a 2-year-old can get into and take? I mean, how do we teach families that these are the details that they need to have when they bring somebody in the home? And I can tell you that the more information that I gave the DSPs when they walked through the door and showed them the logs and showed them everything, the longer they stayed.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Kim. I mean, they don't know what they don't know. And I like that some of the concepts that you talked about. And I think there could be even some universal things that, we could teach DSPs to ask, that even though the answers will be individual based on the people they're supporting, it could be a good starting point. Did I successfully stop sharing my screen? Because I'm seeing everyone. Okay, thank you.
Bethany, I think that this is a component to our crisis that has been lacking for years. And I've advised a lot of parents on what to do and how to do it and how to develop a home care model. And I've got like 9 pages of questions that could and every one of them has come up over the years. I have a folder that has, the family dynamics, the ethics, like we're Catholic, other people may be Jewish or Muslim. I mean, we have to be able to communicate what we expect of the DSP, and the DSP has to know what we expect of them before they can come in and have really any input in how we do things. Because they may have a better idea. And we need to be able to receive that, I mean, it's just the way it is, I think.
Good point. Does anyone else want to have any comment based on the report? You may not have had time to read it thoroughly, but you may have glanced through it. Any other comments or thoughts?
This is Christine. I don't know if you saw what I put in the chat, but I heard this that got talked about at my legislative day that I sadly couldn't attend because of getting sick. The thing is, I heard this as a big hot topic, okay? That, the staff that work in the developmental centers get paid like an average $20 an hour. They don't have to use their own vehicles and stuff. They get to use the state vehicles taking people around and stuff. And if we want to make more people work out in the community outside of the institutional setting, there needs to be some kind of better benefits. So they were saying like, why can't our staff get paid $25 an hour? They're working, they're not sitting in their desk like secretaries. And so they should get paid higher, or there could be on a second idea like incentives, okay, if there was ever such a thing like a gas incentive tax credit that's made up, okay? And saying, like, if you work working in this field, okay, what might keep people going in this field? Well, being able to get like a tax incentive for gas tax incentive that's on top of the rate increase, okay, of the mileage rate business, okay. This is gas tax incentive. If we ever created that, maybe that could be a way to help with this crisis. I don't know. It's made up, okay? But yeah, they said that that the salary should walk with the individual. So if they're able to get paid working in an ICF or developmental center at $20 an hour, why can't the staff get paid the same working in the community? It's like the salary follow the person, money follow the person,
Mm-hmm.
But again, they mentioned that big time. I remember that, just to point that out. And I think, Pete, you were there, you heard that, and Kim.
So there's
Yes,
also,
we did.
thank you for that, Christine. Whoops, Pete, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just confirming, yeah, we did hear a lot of that talk, and the things you're talking about, Christine, we're trying to achieve what you're talking about for sure.
And Kim also put something in the chat room about tiered salaries based on seniority and or training levels, etc. So you'll see in the report, when you guys have a time to look at it, there were a lot of comments from the DSPs, and Bethany can build on this, around compensation. And so there was a lot of conversation about, listen, if I'm trained at a level where I'm passing meds or doing some medical supports and have that level of training, maybe I should make more than someone who doesn't. Seniority, a lot of discussion about the cars, not only the mileage, but the fact that there's a lot of cleaning. So they end up cleaning their cars a lot. There's just a lot that goes into using your own car for some of the trips. So there was a lot of different ideas around compensation packages and how to go about it. And then the other thing we heard a lot, that another way of thinking about compensation, is a lot of conversation around, I show up for my shift and all of a sudden I end up sort of being put in a position where I can't say no to staying an extra 4 hours, and how that's very disruptive. Even if they're being paid, that extra time is something that really starts to weigh on them as far as being exhausted and their own impact on their families, of things they plan to do with their families, and now all of a sudden they can't leave the job. So those were a couple of things we heard. Bethany, I don't know if you want to build on that, but I think some of that's in the chat right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely correct. I was trying to get caught up on the last thing it looks like they can put in the chat.
So I just want to add, Jackie, that when a person goes on shift, if they are to be followed by another DSP and that DSP doesn't show up, that person who is on shift cannot leave. It's not that they have to stay there, or they can get I think it's neglect. They can be charged with neglect, I think, if they leave and leave the consumer by themselves in the hopes that somebody else is going to show up. But you're not allowed to leave. I have a nurse that worked here. She was at another case and she was stuck there for 48 hours, and it was an awake shift.
So people gave us similar examples, Kim, and just talked about, on the one hand, it really, really, really shined through how much they cared about the people they're helping. Right. So on the one hand, they completely understood and didn't want to do anything that would in any way jeopardize that person. But on the other hand, there was real conversation. I think Bethany hit on it, is that it leads to burnout and exhaustion when you lose control sort of your own life schedule?
I mean, even though, you know, my son lives with me, and when we have severe snowstorms or during COVID, I mean, you know, the nurses do the overnight, and they were the ones that called off the most, were the nurses. And so I was not only sometimes providing day shift for my son, but I would be providing an awake overnight shift as well, because he has oxygen and a full face mask and a host of other things that go on throughout the night. So burnout is not, I mean, I know what burnout is, and I just, it's not, it's really bad for the consumer, you know, really bad.
Any other thoughts or questions? Bethany, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I see Teresa's hand up. So I don't know if that's from
Oh,
earlier
I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Yes, it is up. Teresa?
Yeah, thanks. This is Teresa. One thing I've just been thinking about, because it came up in David's presentation as well as Bethany's, and kind of ties to Kim's comment as well, is what is the best way or ways to communicate with different audiences? So I don't know if you all are like me, but I definitely feel like I am on information overload between work emails, personal emails. And so to try to stay up, like David, I think there was a comment in yours about the ever changing requirements or rules, or and then Kim thinking about, like, in a million years, how would I participate in some additional training as a parent of kids with disabilities on how to train my DSP? You know, like, I'm just sitting here thinking, like, how can we, to an overwhelmed group of DSPs and an overwhelmed group of parents, like, do something that doesn't add to the overwhelm, but is in fact helpful, beneficial, and maybe even minimizes the overwhelm. And so, and I mean, I'm sitting here brainstorming, like, hey, if there was a Discord with just my team that was somehow HIPAA compliant, that, like, from a shift change, somebody could send out a quick chat to give somebody an update, or you could do some kind of, like, yes, check in for your shift that confirms you're going to be there, so that if you're not, like, you're not scrambling at the last minute to try and find someone else to fill in. I don't know what, but I just feel like there's something there to, rather than adding additional trainings or meetings or whatever it is, communication that goes out, that we would somehow figure out, like Bethany, if for DSPs, a quarterly focus group worked really well and felt helpful, like, let's not replace that with a newsletter or something. You know what I mean? I don't know, but just trying to think of, like, what is the best way to get additional communication or different communication out to groups.
Well, Teresa, I don't think a group is what I'm thinking of. What I'm thinking of is when the person makes first contact with an agency to bring in DSPs. Once that agency signs them up and agrees to put a DSP in their home, perhaps the agency could have some kind of virtual, something that the family could watch to help them understand what it means to have home care. For those of us that have been doing it for years, I mean, it's like old hat. We don't need any training. And even though things change, they don't change so much that we have to alter pretty much anything that we do. It's very, very, very rare. But for people who are coming into the field at a later point in life, yeah, we're all busy, but what is more important in your life than making sure that your child or the person that you're in charge of is adequately cared for, and that you understand what your role and responsibility is in accepting help into your home? I mean, you make time for the schools, you make time to get your hair done, you make time to go to the grocery store. I think you can make an hour time to get information that would be a wonderful experience for both parties. That's just me.
Any other questions for Bethany or thoughts? I would like to I'll just make one last observation and then throw it back to Bethany for any final comment. In facilitating these, and I've done roundtable facilitation groups or input groups, focus groups on different topics for different organizations around Ohio quite a bit. What did strike me was how uniform the information was. It's usual to do these and hear that the folks in Northeast Ohio have a little different flavor than the folks in Southwest Ohio. The rural folks might tell you something a little different than the urban. In this case, the themes were almost exactly the same everywhere we went, including on the virtual ones. So that was very interesting to me, because typically you would be like, did we interview enough people? Did we talk to enough people, et cetera? What was so interesting to me, and I don't know, David, I see you nodding, maybe you came across the same thing, was it was one of the few times where no matter where we went, the consistency in what people were reporting was fairly astounding. So I think that gives us some sense of comfort that what folks are describing to us, both positive things to build on and other things to fix, I think we should have some confidence that that it probably is a bit of an across the board issue for us to think about. And probably the biggest distinction is if particular providers had a different culture on that sort of provider basis versus the field as a whole. So just wanted to make that observation, because that is not usually held true when I've done these across the state. So let me throw it back to Bethany if you have any other final or wrap up comments, and or David, because the two were so sort of connected or aligned, if you will.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. It's really interesting. I know that, DSPs are stretched, really, really thin. And, kind of like, going back to one of the things Kim just said is we make time for the things that are important to us. And what we heard from DSPs is it's important for them to be able to share their experiences and have the opportunity to talk. So I think we need to make sure that we continue to give people those opportunities. And one of the really neat things is we're in the midst of planning for our annual summit, which takes place in a few weeks. And I was cross-referencing the list of people that have signed up for it compared to people that we saw at the DSP experience meetings. And we have about 25 people that we met that are signed up for our summit. And I mean, I can't say, with any certainty that it's because, we talked about different opportunities, but I would like to think that, giving them the opportunity to share their thoughts and feelings and learn about other ways that they can, develop themselves professionally is why they've then decided to sign up for that. So I think it's really important that we continue to give them those types of opportunities and not always kind of revert to the, wow, well, we know that they're already stretched thin, they're working overtime, they couldn't possibly want to go to this training or do this or do that, because I think a lot of times we might make those decisions for them. Whereas if they have the opportunity to participate in things like that, it really just, fuels their fire and, really does, does help keep them in the field. So with that, David, I don't know if you have anything else that you want to share?
I was just going to say that there's a lot of alignment and agreement between our two projects here. And if there's an opportunity to combine some of these into, like a single narrative or an executive summary or a policy brief, that might be interesting. Not that any of my Health Policy Institute of Ohio folks are on this call, but this could be an interesting pitch if we were interested in collaborating. I know that they have the ear of quite a few folks that might be meaningful to us. So worth exploring further, but I was encouraged by the agreement between these two projects.
Yeah, I'd love to talk with you more about that. So maybe we can connect via email soon.
Sounds great.
All right. Anything else on these agenda items? The next agenda item is general updates. I don't think Steve has a lot of material things to report, but let me give you the opportunity if you do, Steve.
Yeah, nothing material, like you said, Jackie, working through the budget process and everything that's going on. I know everybody on here is well aware of the process and the as introduced budget and how it's working its way through. So nothing really to report on our side that I don't think everybody already knows about or is talking about. So, but if there is anybody else, from DODD on here, I'd touch base with some folks. But if anybody else has updates, you're welcome to share those as well.
Okay. Hearing none.
I can say some.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I can say something that I'm waiting for the thing in writing, but I've heard it's going to be in that amendment is the age restriction of the Medicaid buy-in getting removed. So if that happens, that's going to be celebration. We're going to be partying when that thing gets done. So it's been 5 years working on that case because it's so big. And I'll be truthful and honest. This kind of after this is done, I have another project up on our sleeve because we have another kind of case after this. You all may not know it because it doesn't apply to your life. Is that we have friends who are at risk. What counts as income, what doesn't count as income in Medicaid, okay? And there's a chance of 2 people I know of who one will have to be forced to live in a nursing facility. Another might be forced to live in a developmental center or ICF because they are above that $220,000 disregard. So my point is, we will have to fight to see that equal justice where we get nobody gets said, well, because you make above an X money, you make too much to be on a waiver, so you have to be put in a nursing facility or intermediate care facility. No choice. That is not what Ruben Garcia and I are going to allow. I don't care, so we'll fight and we'll push them, and we would say to them, okay, if you guys say that, then go into a nursing facility in ICF and be in there for 30 days.
Thanks,
so we'll
Christine.
fight on that case because that isn't the way we've came so far, and so much less people in institutions since the 1960s, And
yeah, thanks for all your hard work. It's really paying off.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. If no one else has anything else for the good of the order, I think today's session is coming to a close. So let me throw it back to the director for final comment.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and thanks for the great presentations today. We will certainly be, looking at them closer and trying to align some work with the reports. I lost the word for a minute, and I hope everybody has a great start to the summer. I think we're scheduled for one more meeting in July. So we will be wrapping up our work together at that time. And obviously continuing, ad hoc and that sort of thing as needed. But this formal group, we'll meet one more time. So if there's anything that you specifically want to talk about, make sure you get with Jackie. So everyone have a great rest of your week, and thanks again.